Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. According to the general election timetable released by the Independent National Electoral Commission, political parties for political campaigns for presidential and National Assembly elections will end today. Joining us now to assess the campaign trail, tone of the electorate, and so much more is political analyst FEMI LAWSON. Welcome to the morning show.
Good to be here. Good morning.
So, can we have an overview from your perspective of the political parties' campaigns as they end today? What have been the highlights for you? What have been the lows? And what do you think of the dissemination of messages to the electorate?
Well, good morning. I think one thing that these campaigns, particularly presidential campaigns that is ending today, has thrown up in our electoral space is the fact that we're beginning to see a little deviation from the past by the virtue of younger candidates mostly coming out to engage the citizens on issues that directly affect them. I must not continue this conversation this morning without especially acknowledging the likes of Pres Kingsley Moghalu, Omoyele Sowore, and some other young candidates who have taken the campaigns to the streets, who have taken the issues to the people, and quite unfortunate that most of the actors within the major political parties, the dominant political parties of PDP and APC, have not done as much as these younger candidates have done in really discussing the issues ahead of the election. I would not also but acknowledge the fact that before this campaign went into full, the full campaign mode, we have had situations where some of these candidates, particularly the candidate of the PDP, have had series of engagement with stakeholders, within the polity, and have discussed issues of what he intends to do, particularly on issues that are that are prevalent in our society today. You talk about the issue of the economy, restructuring, security. But unfortunately, when you look at the campaign podium, in so many cases, they are merely reduced to carnivals, and all you find there are musicians, entertaining people, and the party stalwarts picking up the microphone. And we've seen more of abuses, name-callings, and in some cases, you find people instigating violence using the political platform. So the larger political parties have not really fared, even though some have taken some steps, but I must give kudos to the younger elements who are in this race, who have made their campaigns, not carnivals, but issues. They find Omoyele Sowore going to virtually all the states in the Federation, engaging people in town hall meetings. Find day and night, Pres Kingsley Moghalu has been on the road, engaging people on issues. I think this is what our campaigns should look like. We are looking forward to a situation whereby tomorrow our candidates will go to the university campuses, to address the university communities, address the professional bodies, as the major focus of their campaigns, not necessarily all these sort of carnivals, that are so prevalent in our system today. I think fairly, the PDP has not done bad. If you look at the number of engagement its candidates have been able to do in marketing its program, then just like some other, smaller political parties too.
All right, you've been eulogizing the younger candidates for actually taking the right path towards campaigning and canvassing for votes. But as several political analysts have actually looked at it, they've said that these people really stand an outside chance in getting elected into office, especially for the president. So if they do all that has been done, and at the end of the day, they are still seen as outsiders, and those that probably are not approaching this thing properly are the ones that stand a better chance for future campaigns and for posterity, then it's not just right to just go by the way of what is working as against what is not working?
No, I would not want to agree that that is not working. What we're experiencing now is a new order. In the past, it is not even the fact that you could find people like Sowore, Moghalu campaigning for elections. In the past, it was, there was this belief that only the heavyweights, only the former this, former that, can aspire to be presidents of Nigeria. But today, people like Sowore, Moghalu has been able to demystify that. And, you know, it's a process. The fact that today they don't stand chances because of the, you know, prevailing political reality, winning elections, having structures in 774 local government, you know, thousands of polling units, and the financial resources required. But yet, they have been able to establish one fact, that the child of you and I can aspire to be president of Nigeria tomorrow without necessarily, you know, coming from the background of people. Look at people who have been president in Nigeria between, let's say, between 1999 and now. There are people who have been, you know, former Ds, former president, former military head of state, former governor, you know. So, but today we're seeing people coming from professional background, people coming from the private sector, people coming from being personal, you know, being employees, who are coming to vie for the presidency of Nigeria. So even though they may not stand, you know, visible chances today, but the approach is encouraging, and I think with time, the larger political parties may be forced to adopt the same approach that these persons are using in marketing their aspirations. So I don't think it's out of place. I think even the larger political parties have a lot to learn from. If you go to the United States today, political campaigns are not carnivals. There are opportunities to engage citizens, and that's why you find town hall meetings all through the campaign. You find most of the campaigns, even political debates, are held on campuses of universities. That's how important conversations are to them. That's why how important engagements are to them. It's not a moment of carnival like we are. So I think even the larger political parties will have a lot to learn from what these young persons are doing today.
Well, you keep mentioning universities. Let's not forget that universities have been closed, so there was no how they could have taken their messages there.
Even when it was not closed, they have not always seen it as, you know, as an important structure.
And that in itself is an issue. But
yeah.
you are not impressed with the sort of messages that these larger parties have passed. And we've seen promises every election year. They're basically the same messages, the same yearnings of Nigerians. So would you say that these promises are just bogus campaign promises to be said on campaign rallies and never really followed? What is the most ridiculous campaign promise you've heard in this cycle?
I think it has been consistent between 2003 and now. Politicians, particularly those of the major political parties, have consistently used every 4 years to promise us roads, to promise us water, to promise us things ordinarily that should be responsibility of your local community government, you know, like your local government area. And this is quite ridiculous at an age where people are talking about going to the space, where countries are launching satellites, where countries are, you know, are coming out with innovations that is transforming their economy, that is transforming, when countries are talking about, you know, taking education to the virtual world. We are still talking about building roads. In fact, in some cases, we're a borehole.
Ridiculous.
You know, it's so ridiculous. This has not changed really between 1999 and now, and I think it's a big indictment on the political class that even up till now, all you could really promise our people at every point is railway, you know, good roads, you know, borehole, and all sort of funny, you know, promises. I think we must elevate, and sometimes I find it very insulting to our people that in 2019, you are still promising our people basic health care that ordinarily, you know, should have littered every corner of this country. You are still promising our people borehole at an age where most people don't really know even the source of their water. We still want to make our people to pump water, and so I think it's quite insulting, and it's an indictment on them if they don't know. And I think we must, as Nigerians, begin to demand more from these people, more than these promises of roads, borehole, and, you know, health centers that will never manifest. Doing roads should not be a project for campaign. It should be a continuous, you know, basic responsibility of government to make sure that the roads are motorable, to make sure that people have access to basic health care, to make sure that people have potable water. I don't think this should be counted as achievement or as, you know, something exceptional for a government to do. So I think government should campaign on, on issues that are more important to the people. Let us bring economy, put it in the fore. Take issues of, infrastructure, not as in roads, critical infrastructures. Today, we're having speed rail, light rail system all over countries of Africa. We are still on the locomotive, that was launched in 1914 here. So I think when we're talking about, I think these people should begin to talk about the realities of today's world, not the 1914 promises. The same campaign that Awolowo did in 1957 is the same. And when the politicians of old were making these promises, they were always coming back with results at every election cycle. When they promise education, when they get elected, we had free education. When they come back for the re-election, they tell you the number of universities that are built. They tell you, but today, the same road they promised to construct in 2015 is still on the list of roads. In fact, some even say we have started. You promised to construct a road in 2015, and you came back in 2019 to say you have started. For 4 years, for God's sake. These are quite ridiculous promises, and I think we must elevate the standard of our people beyond all this kind of promises.
Okay, you seem to agree with the school of thought that despite the over 70 other candidates, Saturday's election is mainly between two candidates, the incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari and the main challenger, Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party. Now, despite the campaigns that are bereft of serious issues like you mentioned, but Nigerians watched those campaigns.
Definitely.
There was no face-to-face debate, but there was town hall meetings, which Nigerians also watched. From your assessment of what transpired, how will you assess both candidates?
Well, objectively, and without trying to sound unnecessarily biased, would understand that if you put the two major candidates on the table today, the candidate of the PDP have been outstanding. When I talk about the clarity of the messages that both candidates have been preaching. And even for those who have taken time to watch their engagement, both at the town hall level and even on the political platforms where they have taken their campaign to the various states, you come to realize that the messages have been clearer on the part of the candidates of the PDP. They have been more audible, and they have addressed some of the core issues like economy, restructuring, security. These are the real issues that I think this country needs to address beyond, some of the promises of taking Nigeria to a certain level by President Muhammadu Buhari, which in the real context to me cannot really be defined. Next level as in what? From where we are today, how far have we been able to go in the last 4 years as far as the promises made by the All Progressive Congress in 2015 are concerned? So these are the issues I think objectively the candidates and if you look at the rating on many opinion polls, beyond fame and popularity, if you have looked at the polls conducted on the basis of the understanding of these two candidates on the issue of economy, on the issue of security, on the issue of restructuring, the candidate of the PDP has performed creditably well above the incumbent president. Are
you giving credence to the polls that seem to have given the elections, the outcome to one candidate? Or
not necessarily. I just cited that as an instance. These are realities. We were earlier, the Arise TV had an engagement with the president. We've seen the town hall meetings organized for both candidates, on a particular media station too. And I think a lot of Nigerians, and even beyond, could really assess the performances of these two major candidates, and you could really judge from there, without necessarily waiting for the outcome of the polls.
Now, you say that the issues were more clearly, enunciated by PDP, but then what do you think of the various spats, really, in another day, another dispute, another accusation that characterized this campaign? It was highly acrimonious. And how would you assess the tone of this campaign in comparison to previous campaigns. I want to know from your perspective how we have matured in the past 20 years of our democracy. You have mentioned in your response to Adeswa about how basic the promises still are. But do you see any development, any maturity since we've started the Fourth Republic?
No, I think we've had, in most instances, where political actors have degenerated beyond what we had in the past. In actual fact, this 2019 campaign is one of the moments in our electoral history between 1999 and now when you have people making clear speeches, you know, and these were not things that we're used to. We've seen candidates coming out to intimidate, you know, opponent. We've seen even a sitting governor coming out to openly threaten election observers. We've seen, you know, people come to the podium and call people all sort of names just because, you know, of this election. I think there's not been any reasonable advancement in the approach of politicians. The culture has not really improved compared to what we had in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011. In actual fact, 2015, we were lucky to have a president who was not really desperate to hold on to power. And there were a lot of moderations, though there were characters just like we have around the incumbent administration today. There were characters around the then administration of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan who were ready to go this same lane, you know, of doing the desperate things just because of this, because of that election. But I think we have more of them this time around. And I think at no time then did I hear any governor or any major appointee of the government coming out here to threaten people, you know, that they find themselves in body bags. So I think because we had a president whose body language did not show desperation, it actually helped. And 2019, we had expected that there would have been an improvement on the willingness of people to accept defeat. But I don't think, for the second time, people have been made to sign a peace accord. It shows the tension. It shows the level of, you know, fear that's already pervading the space. And it also shows that these actors have not really been playing by the game. That's why we have to have the major presidential candidates coming for the second time to sign a peace accord.
But that happened in 2015. There were also two peace accords signed.
Yes.
One by the general parties and then another by the
two major candidates. Yes, just like we had the second one yesterday. But if you look at the situations in the last couple of days, you could see that there's a lot of tension generated by the comments of political actors. And I think it really calls for concern.
All right, you've been mentioning the very infamous body bag statement being made by a particular governor here in Nigeria. But looking at it, the role of the international community has actually been thrown into the spotlight time and time again. And more recently, yesterday, the INEC chairman has actually said that the international community coming to Nigeria, trying to address the 100 UK observers that are here to observe and not to monitor. And that has been going back and forth. People accusing several international communities, international bodies, of trying to interfere with this particular election. Give us your perspective on the role of the international community. Are they here to, are they supposed to be observers, monitors? What is their role in this particular general elections?
For everyone I have observed, I've raised oppositions to the role of foreign observers and monitors in this election are people who, for no reason, are just afraid of the likely outcome of this election. And unfortunately, some of them, including the governor who made the body bag comment, have observed elections locally and internationally before.
Are you also including the INEC chairman?
In actual fact, the INEC chairman have supervised election in 2 African countries, Sierra Leone and Gabon, in the past. So why are we afraid? And the INEC chairman is not opposed, I want us to get it clear, to the role of the election observers and monitors. We have more observers in every election than monitors because the level of responsibility of election monitors differ, you know, from the role of election observers, whose role are just limited to observing the process, making the reports, and which are usually, you know, useful for future elections, guides, make recommendations, unlike monitors who are legitimately empowered to make interventions in the course of an election and also, play certain roles that observers cannot do. Now, though we have fewer monitors in every election than the number of observers, I don't think we have reason whatsoever to be afraid that people are interested in Nigeria's election. I was in Sierra Leone during the presidential election, and you could really imagine the number of countries, including Nigeria, that monitored that particular election.
Well, can I just come in here? You said that the INEC chairman does not have any objection to
Yes.
election observers.
Because it is INEC that accredits every organization that be monitoring this. They don't just come.
And yet, he has restricted them from addressing the press. They are not allowed to speak to the press.
There are rules. There are rules in election observation. You are not allowed, it is not now, you are not allowed to speak to the press in the course of an election. And for every organizations that are accredited to monitor elections, to observe elections, there are procedures.
You seem to be mixing them up.
No.
Observation and monitoring.
Election monitors are different from election observers, though they work on the same purpose. But election monitors have more power during the process of an election than election observers. Like I told you, election observers cannot interfere whatsoever in the process of an election.
But they do report to the press, because all over the world they're quoted.
Yes.
They're quoted.
Yes.
Election observers said elections in Pakistan or Zimbabwe or wherever.
Yes, that is after elections.
Yes.
Not in the course of elections. But election monitors can make interventions in the course of elections. Where there are infractions, election monitors can come in and address issue, even in the course of an election. They are legally permitted to do that. Like I said, we have fewer monitors, but we have more observers.
Very quickly, I mean, it's 48 hours to go. What is your take on INEC preparedness so far? I mean, we've seen multiple fire incidents, the latest in Anambra State, where over 4,000 smart card readers were destroyed, although INEC says that is just a temporary setback, and they will mop up card readers to make up for it. What is your take, assessment of the readiness of INEC?
Well, let me pick it from the point of the preparation, from the engagement INEC have had with stakeholders. I think we've seen INEC under the current leadership being transparent in terms of engagement of stakeholders, the media, the civil society, even the security agencies. We've had so many interactions, we've seen so many interfaces, and I think it's a good step that is aimed at giving credibility to the election. And if you look at INEC's preparation, especially in the area of deployment of sensitive electoral material, like we are made to know all the states now have card readers that are going to be used for this election. Some electoral materials like the voting cubicles, ballot boxes are already deployed to states, except for the ballot papers, which are usually kept in the vault of the CBN until the eve of the election. I think INEC has been able to move fast enough in ensuring that this election goes smoothly without, unnecessary logistic delays like we used to have in the past, where people have to. And if you look at what happened during the last gubernatorial election in Osun State, INEC was able to achieve one thing that we have never experienced in Nigeria, as at 7:30 a.m. in the morning, all polling stations already have INEC ad hoc staff and electoral materials. It's unprecedented. So we're only hoping that same feat can be repeated during this presidential election by the virtue of the preparation that the Commission has made, so that we will not begin to have reports of people waiting for ad hoc staff, people waiting for election materials. And so I think with the level of deployment that we have seen, I think one thing that is also good to note is that for every step that has been taken by INEC so far, there have been engagement with the civil society and the media for updates. And we are also happy that for the first time, INEC is opening its situation room as soon as the election commences, so that even at the coordinating centers, the civil society, the media can have access to information about happenings across the country as election is, ongoing in the country.
Okay, given the engagement on social media about elections and candidates, and the role these young candidates played in reaching out, should we be expecting massive turnout on Saturday?
It is our hope, because this election will be about the young people of Nigeria, considering the population of young people that are going to vote and that have gotten their PVC. I do hope that the social media, as it has been used effectively, especially by the younger presidential candidates and other candidates into other positions, would also influence the turnout. Because a lot of time, we have a situation whereby you see people so anxious, waiting for the election day, and the election comes. But I think Saturday we may not experience a low turnout because of the mood in town. And I also hope that people will take advantage of the fact that, unlike the past where we have to get accredited, we sit under the tree or we'll go back home and come back by noon to vote. Now we're going to experience simultaneous accreditation and voting. I think that will encourage a lot more people to come out. A lot of people, in 2015, over 2 million people got accredited but never returned to vote.
2.3 million.
So in this case, we may not likely have that.
So INEC is right not to that's simultaneous accreditation and voting.
And I think it's going to save us a lot of time.
Okay. Well, many thanks for sharing your thoughts on INEC preparation and elections in general this morning. Mr. FEMI LAWSON, Public Affairs Analyst and former Chairman, Editorial Board of several leading newspapers. We'll take a short break now. When we return, Public Affairs Analyst Chris Akiri will be joining us for more pre-election analysis. Please stay tuned.